Hello, it's Big Cheds back with another episode. This is My Battles with Cancer, a candid patient and caregiver's memoir. Published it back in 2020, republished it in 2023 after publishing Trading Wisdom and Trading Quotes. I published the audiobook of My Battles with Cancer on Audible recently, so you can go ahead and check that out. But I want the whole book to be for free. That's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm reading it here. I'm Big Cheds on Twitter, Cheds Trading on YouTube. We're doing chapters as hair. We just did how I survived chemotherapy. So let's jump right to it. All right. Hair. It was a wonderful feeling to leave the hospital and drive home after my final chemotherapy session. I looked out the window at all the signs of life around me and marveled at the busyness and grandeur of the city. A reminder that life moved on, and so would I. A new chapter was starting now that I had survived 6 sessions of chemotherapy, although in theory, I still had to deal with one last cycle of side effects. When my first chemotherapy session began, I was a strong and healthy man. When the last chemotherapy session finished, I was a weak and broken man, but at least I had survived the process. There was still a full 5 weeks to go until my final PET CT scan, after which the doctors could determine if I still had any cancer cells in my body. What a feeling that was, to be done with chemotherapy, but unsure of my ultimate prognosis. I was essentially living in a state of limbo. 5 weeks seemed like forever to find out what the next chapter of my life was going to look like. As the song goes, waiting is the hardest part. That being said, focusing on that 3-week recovery cycle helped to keep me distracted from worrying about what the results of that scan might be. The first 2 weeks of this recovery cycle were typical. I used my medications to handle the discomfort and nausea, and I occasionally even had an appetite. As the days ticked on, I counted down until I had passed that time window when my immune system was most vulnerable. I really wanted to relax and enjoy my post-chemotherapy life, but it was too early and it was still too early. So I continued to hold back from celebrating until I passed that 2-week mark. The final week also went well as I pressed forward and managed my symptoms, making sure to take extra special care of myself. In my view, it was a blessing that I was able to finish that final recovery cycle without a trip to the emergency room. Now there was only 2 more weeks to go until I could find out if I still had cancer. Though my body was extremely fragile, my spirits were strong, and I felt deep inside the beginning of a new journey. Full of hope and optimism, I believed that I had survived the most important battle and that the worst of my cancer diagnosis was finally behind me. With the idea of getting my life back on track, I started going on long walks to help stimulate my mind, as well as to get my blood flowing and to give my atrophied muscles a little bit of a workout. It was strange to venture beyond my house more than a block, and I realized that I had not just physical rust to deal with, but I had some physical rust to shake off as well. I was no longer accustomed to dealing with people in public on a daily basis. All my interactions for the prior 6 months had either been with friends, family, or the hospital staff. And with that in mind, I was eager to reconnect with the world, keeping in mind that the process would take some time and I would have to be patient. No pun intended. Walking around the neighborhood, I enjoyed noticing little things. The design of each house I passed, or the various types of trees that lined the street. My senses were ablaze as I marveled at the colors, shapes, and sizes of the flowers that were growing in each garden box I passed. Birds flew overhead, and I studied them as they hopped around from perch to perch. I admired the carefree nature with which the squirrels chased each other up and down the looming ancient trees that lined the street. Every little detail of life now had new meaning for me. As I slowly breathed in, I felt that even the air around me had a greater meaning and value than before, helping to put a smile on my face and a warm and fuzzy feeling in my heart. I knew this feeling would not last forever, and I wanted to savor it. This moment offered me the rare ability to be open enough to appreciate everything around me for the beauty it held. Now that 3 full weeks had elapsed since my last chemotherapy session, I was able to finally take my first drink of alcohol. And man, did it feel great. Did it taste great? Drinking that glass of red wine was an amazing feeling, boosted by the knowledge that my body was slowly starting to return to normal. I could now partake in regular adult activities like drinking a glass of wine or having a beer. It was important for me to be able to do things that made me feel like my old self. The following week, I walked to my favorite local bar where I was a regular and I knew the bartenders. Upon arriving, I grabbed a seat at one of the high top tables and I ordered my usual drink and some food from the waitress. While I was waiting for my food to arrive, I watched one of the bartenders, who always made sure to say hi, walk right by me. On the way back from the kitchen, he passed by again, and this time we made eye contact, but he kept walking. It was a weird and bizarre feeling to be ignored by someone who I thought knew me well, and then I realized that it was because he didn't recognize me. This individual was used to seeing me with a beard and long hair, and post-chemotherapy, my skin was pale and my head was hairless. I didn't even have eyebrows. This was a stark reminder that even though I was starting to feel more normal by the day, on the inside, I still had a long way to go externally in my recovery process. As I got closer to my PET CT scan appointment to look for any remaining evidence of cancer, something wonderful happened. After taking a shower, I looked in the mirror and I noticed that my hair was growing back. What an amazing feeling it was to see those little shoots coming through in the eyebrow space, as well as tiny whiskers emerging from my face. Within a few days, I even had enough growth to use my beard trimmer. This was a momentous occasion, reinforcing the idea that my body was on the way to a full recovery. In addition, this was a hugely symbolic victory for me. Prior to the chemotherapy, having long hair and a beard had helped to fuel my sense of strength and of vitality. Over the next few weeks, I continued to push myself by going further and further away from the house during my walks. I started going back to the gym as well, doing some light cardio on the treadmill as well as swimming. With the ability to glide underwater, I felt like a free man, born again and ready to interact with nature. I also started to go back to the basketball court. Since I was still recovering from my knee surgery, it was out of the question to play with anyone else, as the wrong type of physical contact could cause major damage to my knee. Before I started chemo, I would occasionally shoot free throws at least 3 days a week, as part of my normal workout routine. I was more than excited to return to the court now and resume that practice. My first trip there post-chemotherapy was quite humbling. I was so weak that my first free throw attempt did not even make it to the rim. With some slight embarrassment and a bruised ego, I gathered the ball and I tried again. And this time it hit the rim, but it didn't go in. These failures were a not so subtle reminder of just how feeble I had become and how far I had yet to go in my physical recovery. For the next several attempts, I did my best to will the ball into the basket. And though that failed, by the 12th or 13th try, I was finally able to hit a free throw. It was critical for me to push myself despite my weak state, as I believed that getting stronger physically would help my mental and emotional recovery as well. As I approached the date of my final PET-CT scan, one thing I noticed that I was becoming increasingly emotional. Waiting for those results had been absolutely agonizing because I could not make any long-term plans in case the cancer was still inside my body. To calm myself down, I tried to think things through logically, and I decided that the fact that my body had responded so well to chemotherapy meant that I was likely to be cancer-free. Closing my eyes, I tried to imagine what it would feel like to sit in the doctor's office and get that news that I no longer had cancer. I would shake the doctor's hand and celebrate that new chance at life. The final week before the scan felt eerily similar to when I had to wait for my initial lymphoma diagnosis. While I was enjoying my time with friends and family that holiday weekend, I had a strong feeling that the test results would reveal that I did have cancer, though I could not be sure. Now I was having almost the opposite experience, being almost completely sure that I did not have cancer anymore, but I was still not certain. The waiting really is the hardest part, especially in these life and death moments as your imagination runs wild. When you're thirsting for definitive information, it is so easy to find things on the internet to fill your head. And more often than not, they're strange, scary, and inaccurate. Did you just say radiation? That's the next chapter. My Battles with Cancer, a Candid Patient and Caregiver's Memoir. I'm doing the whole book for free. I want it to be available to anyone and everyone. I was a cancer patient and a cancer caregiver. I'm cancer-free now. Thankfully, I'm blessed. And I want this book to help people. I want it to reach people. I published it in 2020, republished it in 2023. You can get it now on Audible and listen to the audiobook. The same is true for my prior books I published, Trading Wisdom and Trading Quotes. Encourage you to check those out. I'm Cheds Trading on YouTube. I am Big Cheds on Twitter. Folks, thank you. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you soon.